What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Film Jump with Jesse and Chris. What's up, Chris?
Not much.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, just hanging out. Just hanging around.
We're going to be talking about film versus TV and the, what did you say? The psychology behind it.
Yeah,
and...
this is our thesis statement. No, just the difference between viewing TV and movies and the viewing habits. For example, we've been to plenty of movie nights in our day, and people will bring their own movies to choose from. And anytime there's a movie that's like 3 hours, the response from everybody is like, "Oh my gosh, I can't watch a 3-hour movie. Like, it's so long." But I've done hangouts and watch parties where it's like we'll binge the final season of Stranger Things, all 6, 7, 8 episodes, or the 4 episodes they just dropped, or whatever, or the back half of this season of this anime show, and it's just an unusual thing that it's not so much about the raw time measured in minutes. There's other things at play.
When you sit down and watch a movie with like a loved one, for example, when me and my wife, we go to watch a movie, or at least I'm trying to convince her to watch a movie because I love watching movies.
Yeah. Is she more of a binge TV kind of a person?
Yeah. So okay. I'm like, hey, let's watch this really popular, famous movie that you haven't seen, which is really weird that you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But we're going to watch it because it's awesome and we're going to have a good time. And then it's like, the time, I don't know, this and that. And then guess what? We're currently rewatching Lost. Yeah. So we watched like 2 or 3 or 4 episodes in a row.
Yeah.
And which is great. Yep. I love Lost, but that show is so catered for commercials.
Yeah.
We're watching it on Amazon through Freevee or whatever it is. So, what gives? Why don't you want to sit and watch a movie, a classic, a banger, or versus just let's watch some more TV?
Yeah, and James Cameron talked about it too. He's like I'll see my kids sit and watch 6 hours of Netflix or something. He's like no one cares if my movie's 3 hours in a theater. You can sit and watch it. But some of it, the biggest key difference is that TV episodes, even on the short, now some of the streaming ones are in the 30-40 minute range, but sometimes they're at most an hour. They're kind of in that 40 minutes to an hour range, but they're often designed and structured with some kind of cliffhanger, some kind of ending, so it's not, and they have natural breaks. If you put in just a movie that's a 3-hour movie, unless you actively pause it and interrupt it, you're getting one uninterrupted experience, and it's, let's use a 3-hour movie as a blueprint. An hour for the first act, the beginning, an hour for the middle, an hour for the ending, in terms of thirds. With episodes of TV, you have a 40-minute to hour-long episode that is designed, even within a television series, to have a beginning, middle, and end within that episode. So you're getting...
And typically a cliffhanger.
And you're getting the story structure of like, here's the setup, here's the rising action, here's the climax, and here's the resolution of this, all within 1 hour. So you're getting this kind of semi-complete experience that almost always ends with the... Even if it's not a cliffhanger, the story uncontinued or unfinished,
right,
and left to be more pieces. There's more episodes in the season. So it's designed to be a shorter, quicker, more bite-sized experience that then also hooks you in to want to, well, let's go on to the next episode. What's one more episode hurt? It's like the whole idea of like the potato chips. Like you can't eat just one. Like one potato chip is not enough to satisfy you, but a whole bag is a lot. But if you eat it one at a time before you know it, you've eaten the whole bag versus if someone were to just present you with like 5 potatoes or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the different way that people digest it, and I've always been fascinated by that. It's like it's not the time, it's the way it's structured.
Well, yeah, I feel like it's more of a thing of today, not a generational thing per se, but it's a technology thing and a culture thing now. Yeah. So rewind back to when Lost, because I brought that up already, when that first aired. I was watching that with my parents, or at least my mother at the time, and we would watch it every week it came out.
Me and my older brother.
Yeah, we'd have to wait, and you can't binge it, right? So the only long-form experience you could have was maybe a mini-series that was playing everything, or maybe reruns of shows that kept going over and over.
Yeah, unless you bought a TV series on DVD, you were only experiencing it bite-sized.
But the only other long-form experience would be the theater.
Yeah.
A theater or a movie, per se, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward to today, in a Netflix world, in a streaming world, it maybe even, dare I say, an ADHD world where we are wanting to be constantly fed and we can't pay attention to this and that. Like you can binge, maybe it feels easier to binge because it's a click, 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 and not like the transfer of a disc or a drive to a theater, or
Yeah.
the pausability. You can pause live TV nowadays. You couldn't do that before.
Yeah, and interesting, and I think there might be maybe in more circles than some. For example, the pausability. It's kind of perceived, especially if you're at like a movie night with like 5, 6, 7 people or something. It's kind of a weird social faux pas to be the person to be like, hey, can you pause it? I'm gonna go whatever, because everyone's watching that movie. Just like in the theater, you don't pause the movie. But for a TV series, you don't have to worry as much because, like, well, the end of the episode's probably soon, and you get the natural break. Be like, hey, before you start the next episode, I'm gonna go do this, and so it fits a lot better with like the binging factor of it, like the sort of. And I think that sometimes, I know that TV is advancing, and TV and cinema, there's not a whole lot of like, well, movies are up here and TV is down here. That gap has been largely bridged. But I think people are more willing and able to kind of passively watch television more than a movie. I feel like because culturally movies are like you go into a theater and watch the movie, or you sit down and watch the movie. It's kind of got this like, it calls a higher engagement and respect. Versus TV, it's like people put on TV as background noise. Like there's just kind of less of a reverence for it. So I think even if you're sitting on your couch and you're engaged in the TV, like it still feels like a little less kind of important or matter than a movie maybe. Like you're just like, oh, I'll just pop it in and I can kind of just veg out and turn my brain off and just kind of watch it. And and here's another one. I don't know if in your experience, but in my experience, it's not strictly, but it seems like ladies are a little bit more likely to want to binge a TV show than sit down and watch a movie, and guys are a little bit more like, hey, dude, let's watch a good movie. I don't know, or at least me as a guy, I'd like to sit down and watch a movie, but like a girl is always like, well, let's like watch a couple episodes of the show, or let's start this TV show, or rewatch Friends, or whatever,
Well, we certainly didn't do like actual research or experimentation before.
This is purely anecdotal.
Just a discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting in that there could be some correlation there between the male and female or whatever, or maybe even it goes beyond that. Like, let's say somebody who is single versus somebody who is dating versus somebody who is married.
Yeah.
What are your social life like? What's your work schedule like? I think a lot of that comes down to a time management thing.
Yeah.
For my wife, she personally doesn't. She has a hard time. I use air quotes, wasting time just in front of a TV when we could be doing chores or we could be doing something productive. But then at the same time, when it's late, we're watching Lost. We're going to watch a TV show. Well, it seems like less of a commitment and something that you can maybe say, let's stop right now and pick back up where we're at.
And that's another interesting thing is that a TV show, if you compare many episodes of a TV show or a season of a TV show to a movie, the TV show is a longer time commitment. But here's the thing. Let's say you've got an hour and a half to kill. No one wants to watch an hour and a half of a 3-hour movie, pause it, and finish it the next day. So you've got an hour and a half of kill where you want to watch something. You can't really, there's not many movies that are going to fit in there, but you could watch 1 or 2, or maybe if you're watching like an anime, a couple episodes of a TV show in that hour and a half. So in some ways, viewing television in terms of a per episode basis is more flexible because you can fit it into more or less time. I remember when I was binging some stuff, sometimes I would wake up early enough and I would even like slide an episode or two in before I got ready for work. Right. It's like there's no movie that fits that amount of time. You're not getting up that early for work, So it's like it's kind of this weird thing where it's like it's the bite-sized pieces that makes it easier to just slide it in and watch it and get your little bits and get your little bit. It's like, oh, well, we got time for an episode, but it's like it's hard to be like, oh, I've got time for this 2.5-hour movie.
Or
like,
I got 30 minutes for the first part of this movie.
Exactly. You know, and again, maybe some people can just pause and stop movies and just watch them piecemeal. I'm more of like, right. I like to watch a movie in one sitting, but maybe the exception being Lord of the Rings that are spread across multiple discs. They're kind of built for stop after a disc. But for me, like if it's all on one disc, like I want to watch the whole thing.
And you can just as easily stream those movies on, whatever streaming platform if you own them or rent them or whatever. Yeah. So, is it a time thing or is it just the whole package of it?
Yeah.
And I keep bringing up Lost. I'm probably going to keep talking about that as my example because when you watch a show that was built for cable versus released on Netflix, it's built for those commercial cliffhangers.
Yeah,
and you can even hear the noise that it makes to build up to it, and then boom.
Yeah, because not only are they having cliffhangers sometimes at the end of episodes, they will have the whole writing structure of television used to be designed around the commercial break so that you would go to commercial break on essentially a cliffhanger.
Right.
And so it's like, even within the episode, it's like, oh God, it's going to that commercial now. I can't wait for it to come back, because it's like, how are you going to hook people in to sit through the commercials and still be watching your show and not get distracted by anything else? So it's like, even within the episodes, and even when you watch them without commercials, they still have those rises of like, ooh, that's a cliffhanger, cut to black, and then it cuts back and picks up. It's like, it creates these, just the pattern of it is, there's, some people talked about how TV screenplays used to, or teleplays or whatever, used to kind of be structured with like something kind of like 8-minute segments almost, like something big or noteworthy kind of has to hit that like every 8 minutes kind of thing, which also kind of patterns into commercial breaks, but they're just structured a little bit differently than a film screenplay, which can like marinate in the middle act for like a half an hour straight and there's not a ton going on, like just the whole pattern. And I think a little bit to that kind of modern attention span generation, I think people might be less inclined to kind of just vibe with a movie for a long stretch of time, as opposed to just like watching a couple episodes of a TV series. It's like, you're going to get your beginning, middle, end, you're going to cut, you're going to get to start it up, you're going to get to stop whenever you want. A 3-hour movie feels like it can only be a 3-hour commitment,
Yeah, and maybe it's the very nature of a show how they set up to, more or less a cliffhanger, or not so much a cliffhanger, but how the end of each episode makes you want to watch the next episode. And the fact that it's just so easy to click and not have to wait, that people now are more inclined to just keep going. And that's why you see some streaming services have reverted back to the weekly drop, whereas we might drop 1 or 2 to get everybody watching, and then we're going to drop it once a week now.
Yeah.
And number one, to keep our, to keep our viewers coming, but then to kind of build that anticipation.
Yeah, it makes it more of a, if the whole season dumps, it's just a matter of everybody being like, oh my gosh, did you binge the season of Daredevil yet? Did you binge the season of that yet? Oh my gosh, go home and do it, then we'll talk about it. It's like when it was one episode at a time, everyone was just talking about the last episode.
And for a week.
And anticipating the next episode. I remember like when True Detective dropped, everyone was like talking week to week, like what's all this about? And I remember I was recommended the show as it was a few episodes in, and I was able to catch up in the time waiting and then watch the last few episodes as they aired. So it was like you could grow an audience organically that way, versus like, hey, the whole season's dropped, and like just tell people to watch the whole season because you watched the whole season. And there's not that conversation of like, oh, well, here's what I think's going to happen. It's very much like, have you seen it? Oh, don't wait don't miss the ending. That next episode, it's interesting. But,
and also I think a lot of it for me is that if I binge, let's say, an 8 or 10 episode show in a day or two, I'm like, man, I had to trudge through a lot of maybe fluff, maybe not fluff, to get to a satisfying conclusion of a story. Whereas, man, I probably could have just watched a 2-hour movie and got a more truncated and lean experience. So you have to kind of look at it that way. It's like, what do you really want? And that's why I don't really necessarily like to binge a TV show. I like that anticipation. I like wanting to go see it soon. Like,
and it's weird in the dynamics of like, per unit, a film is a bigger time investment and commitment, so it feels like it takes longer. But in terms of the total, like the total, I don't know, weight or whatever you want to describe. Like if someone commits to, I'm gonna watch Lost, is there a little bit of a itch to be like, well, we got to knock an episode or 2 out because we're trying to get through this whole show. Like if we don't watch it, we're never gonna get through it. We got to watch an episode or 2 every now and again. Versus a movie, I can watch it whenever I want, and if I don't watch it tonight, I can watch it tomorrow, and that one movie will always be able to just be watched as one movie whenever I feel like it. So again, if you're on the docket deciding, like, are we going to finally watch, I don't know, Interstellar, or are we going to watch another episode of this show that we've been watching for a few weeks? It's like, well, do we want to try to knock out the show more? And then it's a whole, there's a lot of different elements to it, and I don't think there's any one right or wrong answer, but it's just interesting to think about.
Yeah, and a show like Lost, which not many people I don't think are really watching now like they were back then, but Lost is so catered for television that it is kind of a chore to binge that. When we watch it, and every 5 minutes there's a 2-minute ad for the same stinking ad, and they're ads, they're not commercials anymore, they're ads. So you watch it and you're like, man, come on already. And then when they for some reason, I don't know why, but just the other day we were able to watch like 3 episodes in a row with no ads. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, how refreshing is this? Like,
Yeah.
even though it still does those beats,
Yeah.
there's no ads or
The
commercials, and it was
I can tell you,
smooth sailing.
I can tell you I loved watching Lost on DVD because it would be 2 to 3 episodes per disc. So with like 40 to 45 minute episodes, it's like each disc was almost just like a 3-part kind of movie that you were watching. So it's like when I would watch it on DVD and re-watch it on DVD, I wouldn't think in terms of the episodes. I would think in terms of like, I'm going to knock a disc out and then I'm going to watch another disc and then tomorrow I'll watch a disc. And it was just, it's a whole different, there's all kinds of mixes and matches in terms of how it plays out. But it's interesting that, it'd be interesting to poll a bunch of people and be like what's like the larger commitment is watching a show, but people will watch part of a show that's as long as 3 movies or as long as 2 movies in a sitting, but they don't want to watch a single film. It's just interesting the way, things are paced and structured.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's think about this here. People watch TV and movies at home.
Yeah.
They watch both.
Mm-hmm.
I will 100% die on this hill when I say every single movie, whether it's a good movie or a bad movie, is better viewing in a movie theater.
100%.
So if you think about it like this, a movie, let's say a big grandiose blockbuster like a Dune or, the next crazy Avengers movie or whatever, is the experience in the theater so much more different than watching that at home.
Yeah.
Even the first viewing at home doesn't come close to the theater.
Yeah.
So you can have that passive viewing of a movie at home. But let's say you take the TV show and a Lost and you throw it on the big screen.
Yeah.
Is it still as dynamic?
Yeah.
And I think it's not just a yes or no. I think it goes show by show because Lost has those commercials baked into it, whereas a show like Game of Thrones or something else where it's like more of that hour-long stretch might be more cinematic and might even be a bigger deal on a movie theater.
And that opens up an interesting thought of which is a better / cooler experience of watching 2 to 3 episodes of TV at home or going to a theater and watching a movie. I think most people would say, whether they prefer it or not for convenience, that the more premium experience is seeing a movie in a theater. So you have to think now it's like, well, watching a movie at home is kind of like watching a movie kind of depleted a little bit or a movie kind of with the whatever turned down, whereas TV shows are designed to be an at-home experience. So you're not getting anything downgraded from the maximum experience of a TV show. Like, yeah, a TV show in a theater would be, there's plenty of them that would be very cool, but generally speaking, when the new episode drops, you're watching it on your TV and that's how everyone's watching it, versus when a new movie comes out, it's in a theater. So watching the movie at home might feel a little bit less special. So it's like, well, we're watching the TV series at 100% ability on our home TV, or watching a movie at 50% as cool as it would be at home. Well, I don't know.
And we're huge cinephile snobs, and
so we're overthinking this.
Well, and I was gonna say that we both have home theater setups with a large screen and projector.
Yeah.
So we can get that theater experience at home, and I gotta say, watching some of Lost and some other shows on the big screen, it does feel better. So I can imagine it would be much cooler.
Yeah, me and my brothers were binging Demon Slayer on my home projector, and it was awesome. So it's like it depends, and that's another thing. Some people's home setup, it's like, every time I have plenty of great theater experiences because a lot of mine are sort of opening night with a lot of people that are jazzed to be there. So a lot of no one's causing disruptions. Everyone's just really into whatever the movie is because it's the opening night crowd. But sometimes when you see a movie and it's not opening night, and the minute you get that horrible group that's just disrupting the whole experience, it's like you get a little ping of why do I even come to the theater? This is nonsense. This is why people stay home. So it's interesting.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you say the theater is a more premium experience, and I'll give my theater religion here that I kind of talk about all the time. If you listen to our podcast before. Going to the theater is like going to church for me.
Yeah.
Not to be sacrilegious about it or anything, but you pay a premium price for a premium experience, and you want that best of the best. So you do run the risk of getting those jerks who are on their cell phone with max brightness, who are talking, texting, being rude, or talk, whatever the case is, and that can totally eliminate and rob you of that that experience. You know, if you bring your small child to the theater and you know you couldn't get a babysitter or whatever, I'm sorry, you should not have gone to the theater.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the way it is. If you can't get a babysitter, you don't get
Yeah,
to go.
you don't go out to the restaurant without your wallet, you know.
Right,
Like,
which is why like that stuff works for home. So, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where
yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
yeah.
And it's weird because it used to be kind of, I think, in bygone generations, not so bygone, the thing to do was like, oh, you take a girl out to the movies, you know, like that's a date night. Like that's date night. You go to the theater. Like I feel like that was kind of like you ask a girl out and you go to dinner and a movie or dinner then a movie or what have you. And or I mean, maybe we're just movie lovers. We're like, of course, but now it's like, oh, what's the big thing for like the last 10 years? Everyone's like, oh, you got to Netflix and chill. You want to come over just Netflix and chill? It's like, and I understand the sort of social elements of that, which is you guys are already at one of your houses. You're already in a kind of comfortable, relaxed kind of setting.
Snuggle
like,
up.
Yeah, the whole like come back to my place thing is already like halfway done because you've come over in the first place to Netflix and chill. But it's like, so I understand it that there's parts of it beyond that have nothing to do with the viewing experience. But I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, you know, the title of this is like film versus TV, but I don't even really know if it's like a versus. It's more so just understanding the dichotomy of the two and when one might be better than the other.
Compare and contrast.
Yeah, and for me, I would say the theater 100% will always trump everything else, and I would even throw a TV show up in the theater rather than watching a movie at home.
But I can admit, like even in my own, like when I'm in the mode of like binging an anime or something, like there is something really cool about that kind of. Each episode's like, once you take the commercials out of an anime episode, you're getting like 20 minutes an episode, and it's really bingeable, and you've got like 9 episodes on a disc, and you can just crush it, and it just feels like a big continuous, like I'll admit, like there's plenty of things where I'm like, man, like movies don't do it like this, you know, movies don't have that kind of movement, you know, in a 3-hour movie or anything like that, just because it's so compacted and it's just a different structure. And it's like I can appreciate the differences of both, and there are pros and cons. And
I'm not saying to binging a show is bad.
No,
by no means, but it does feel.
It's interesting that it feels like it's an easier thing for people to do than to watch a long movie, and that's the kind of thing that like the crux of this conversation. It's like it is weird that someone will binge 3 to 4, 5 hours of a television series like nothing. But saying, do you want to sit down and watch this 3-hour movie? Do you want to go see a 3-hour movie? It just feels like, 3-hour movie, you know? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have the answer.
There's not an answer to that puzzle. It's just a conversation.
Just, something a little bit more contemplative. Yeah. But let us know what you guys prefer. Let us know, do you prefer the binge experience or to be, you know, that slow drip feed of a weekly release? Or, you know, what is your preference? I mean,
chime in. We don't have the answers here, but we're interested in hearing other opinions.
This is almost like its own little
open topic.
Little social research here. I don't know. But hit that like button, follow us, and subscribe, and that will give us a lot of encouragement to keep going on this thing because we have a lot of fun doing it, and we appreciate everybody who's been along the way so far, and I think we're going to keep going onward and upward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. See you.